So Jillian and Saya have shown us what impact a Pets Welcome approach, or the lack thereof, can have on the people and family who we are trying to support. And now we turn to a provider who not only sees and understands that need, but has fully embraced co-sheltering and the co-living of people and animals as a part of their services. We have another very special guest joining us, Nathaniel Fields, the CEO of Urban Resource Institute, the largest provider of domestic violence sheltering services in the country, and a provider who has been co-sheltering people and pets together for 10 years. And we have another very special guest in our midst to help facilitate that conversation about the journey to embracing animals as a part of trauma-informed services for survivors of domestic violence and families experiencing homelessness. Tony Weaver, our moderator for this fireside chat, has 15 years of experience in the child welfare field and extensive experience in homelessness and mental health programs. Tony served in previous leadership positions at St. Anne's Family Services, Skid Row Housing Trust in Los Angeles, and Bronx Works in the Bronx, New York. Tony currently works at Wayfinder Family Services, where he's responsible for the Cottage, Wayfinder's temporary shelter care program for children removed from their homes for abuse or maltreatment, as well as mental health and medical services. Tony is currently working to expand housing opportunities for individuals and families experiencing homelessness and expanding community behavioral health resources throughout the state of California for marginalized community members. Everyone, please welcome one of My Dog Is My Home's original board members and my old boss, Tony Weaver. Welcome back to My Dog Is My Home, Tony. I am so glad to have you here to lead this discussion with our very special guest, Nathaniel Fields. So with that, I will hand things over to you, Tony, to introduce our special guest.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Christine. I just want to preface this by, if I am in a coughing fit at some point, I've been a little sick, but I am excited to speak to Mr. Fields and really have all of us get to know more about kind of what he is doing to serve our community. So again, it's a pleasure to be back with My Dog Is My Home for this conference and to see how much this organization has grown. I wish you all could see where it started to where it is now. It's a real testament to how a seed can really blossom into something special that really is impactful to a lot of folks. As you mentioned, a lot of my career has been focused on serving families experiencing homelessness, which is why it's really my pleasure to be able to have this conversation with Nathaniel Fields, who is a leader in the field of serving survivors of domestic violence and families experiencing homelessness. I want to give a little background on Mr. Fields before we get started. So Nathaniel Fields is the CEO of Urban Resource Institute, informed by 2 decades of practical work and achievement in social and human services. He has spearheaded the transformation of URI in size, scope, and services for vulnerable populations in New York City, particularly victims of domestic violence. Since taking the helm of the organization in 2012, he's transformed it into a dynamic multi-service agency, nearly tripling the budget and building it into the largest provider of domestic violence shelter services in the country, which is a feat, honestly, within itself. I think that is so impressive in account of your leadership and what you've been doing. Under his leadership, URI is focused on innovation, exemplified by groundbreaking programs, focused on prevention as well as services, such as People and Animals Living Safely, which is PALS, Legal Education Advocacy Program, LEAP, Career Exploration Program, Abusive Partner Intervention Program, and Relationship Abuse Prevention Program, targeting youth and teens. To further his vision, Mr. Fields is committed to the culture of excellence and an environment with data-driven, measurable outcomes. Nathaniel serves in leadership roles for numerous organizations and councils, including the Human Services Committee of the Transition Team for New York City Mayor-elect Eric Adams, the Board of Human Services Council, New York City Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, 2020 Nonprofits and Social Services Advisory Council on Reopening New York City, the Special COVID-19 Domestic Violence Task Force of the New York State Council on Women and Girls, and the COVID-19 Response Work Group of the New York City Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence. And that's just to name a few. We could keep going and I could just be listing all the wonderful things he's been engaged in and take up all this time. At URI, Nathaniel enjoys being a part of the community of people committed to improving the lives of others When asked to identify his vision for URI, he states, "Hope is at the cornerstone of everything we do," which speaks for itself. Mr. Fields, welcome to My Dog is My Home's Co-Sheltering Conference for 2023. It is a privilege to have this opportunity to speak with you for the benefit of all the stakeholders here across health and human services and animal welfare. So let's get started. Mr. Fields, you're obviously a well-respected and prolific leader in this space of serving survivors of domestic violence, women and girls, families experiencing homelessness, and I'm sure that list could go on. Sometimes for people so involved in the work of serving marginalized communities, the idea of also thinking about animals is cursory. It's really on the back burner. And sometimes it's even laughed at as not even a reasonable idea. It's seen as an issue that isn't worth investing time in light of the many other needs and challenges that our clients experience. So I have a twofold question for you. At what point in your journey as a leader did you realize that thinking about animals was an important part of serving people? More specifically, was there a particular moment, person, or case that served as a catalyst for your thinking about sheltering people and animals together?
Well, Tony, thanks for moving through that bio for me. And of course, this is such an important conference. I'm delighted to be here. And congratulations to you. 15 years of in the helping sector, if you will, is just tremendous. And I see you're back home to some degree, engaging based on what Christine had to say, her old boss. As I get centered on your question, I am so thankful to be in a leadership role, leading URI, because I work with so many incredible people on our team, over 500 individuals committed to ending domestic and gender-based violence and reducing homelessness. And they are true heroes. And I'm very pleased to be their leader as the CEO. So when I think about our work, when I think about how important it is, I think that we started to work with the concept that it's about, when we look at victims of domestic violence who are homeless, that it's about reducing barriers to safety and healing, right? So, and when we looked at it from that perspective, we recognized that there were many barriers to safety and healing. And our goal is not to judge those barriers, but to understand it from the survivor's perspective, to understand what they've done to reduce those barriers and what we can do as a provider and part of this sort of ecosystem to lend aid. So how did it start? I would say back in 2012, we were conferencing, and conferencing is so important because it's an opportunity to celebrate with our colleagues in the sector and learn information. We're sitting in DC, I'm sitting in DC presenting on some trauma-informed intervention. After doing that, I wanted to go to a workshop where I didn't really know a lot about a particular subject area. And I saw this listed in a conference, pets as it relates to victims of domestic violence. And it was truly, what are we talking about here? I've been around for a minute, as you've heard, and I didn't really hear folks talking about pets as it relates to domestic violence. So I signed up. And my colleague in 2011, 2012, Ali Phillip, who's author, attorney, advocate, who had such incredible information about the subject, talked about victims of domestic violence who had pets and the poor response from communities, particularly the domestic violence communities. And as she continued to talk about the data and about the lack of resources, in that aha moment, I took it back to New York City and partnered with our team to say, hey, if we're about this work of understanding the barriers that victims face, what are we doing about this issue? And with that, we started to become curious by talking to survivors who had pets. We started to look at the literature, and we recognized in New York City at that point, not one domestic violence shelter, there were over 50, allowed a victim of domestic violence to bring their pets in with them to shelter. Why this is so important is because when we look at the prevalence of domestic violence, sometimes people say, hey, you might be sensationalizing the data, but it's real data. You know this, but just to make sure everyone else who's listening understands that it's often life and death. You know, the number one cause for women who are, particularly women who are murdered in not just New York City, but around the country, is due to intimate partner violence. So when we talk about risk and safety, we're often looking at those risks can lead to the worst outcome. So we want to understand risk and do something about it. And so with that, we created PALS, People and Animals Living Safely, as a pilot, because government was a little shaky to say, go full in, with pets in the environment. And so we did it as a pilot in 2013.
I really appreciate the taking the lead on that, because that is an area where you have to do some convincing sometimes. And this next question is somewhat referring back to Jillian and her daughter and what they were saying. I'm curious, have you noticed a noticeable difference in children's recovery from trauma since you started accepting pets?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been at this about 10 years, and the team has told me we've accepted a couple of hundred pets at this point in many families. And so we know from the work with people and pets, particularly when something has happened to an individual, that trauma in our work needs to be attended to. What we don't want to do is increase the trauma that a family have faced. We heard from Jill and Saya about their experiences. And part of our work was to understand that pets are part of the family, right? Particularly during times of crises. And we see this, I think we read some data stat that probably 63% of households have pets, and even now more due to COVID. And in reality, when people were going through things, that they sort of wanted to get a pet. And from that pet during times of crises, that people know that the pet provided unconditional love, that pet became part of the family. It helped them deal with what was overwhelming to them. And so victims of domestic violence experience the same thing. Pets are part of the family. It helps them navigate through trauma that they've experienced. And so it helps to have that pet not separate the family so they can heal together, both for the adults and the children.
Can you explain a little bit more about those beginning stages of PALs and integrating animals? More particularly, I'm curious, did it occur to you that accepting people with their animals was trauma informed? And also, how did your board and the leadership of URI react when you brought this to the table and said this is something you wanted to pilot?
Well, I would say if the staff members, some of them have been with us for 10 years, if they're on and listening, they probably thought I lost my mind. Providers are wanting to do the good work here, but it's difficult. We often operate, you've been around for 15 years, we often operate with very low resources. The work is incredibly rewarding, but challenging. And so we were expert in working with victims of domestic violence, still learning, but expert there. We started in 1980, so over 40 plus years of experience working with victims in the space. You want to add pets to our work, Nat Fields? This is complex. This is challenging. So we had to get buy-in from our staff first. And once the staff started to look at the same things, the stories from survivors in terms of barriers, how it would enrich a survivor's life and not add to the traumatic experience by separating their family, providing some of the information as it relates to what it would mean to care for pets, what would be their role and responsibilities. And once we provided that information, one of my colleagues who was with me, Jennifer White-Reed, who was our vice president of domestic violence residential services, she's since progressed to senior vice president, started to do that heavy lift with the team members to get that information to achieve buy-in. Our board has a different set of lens. They, risk and how is this going to, how are you going to pay for it? Because now we're adding another family member, another living being to our work, and they're a real cost. Yeah. And so they wanted to say or ask, how are you going to mitigate those risks? How are you going to pay for this? And so we started to really think through in the early phases, answering those questions. Once we produced the data, particularly with the pilot form, giving us an opportunity to give the experience, the board started to buy into it. We had to also show, listen, we work with human beings, we have pronounced knowledge. We didn't work with animals before. So we didn't have that deep expertise, and we were clear about that, but we knew how to get help. And we, the welfare community, the Mayor's Alliance to End Homelessness in New York City, the ASPCA, a few of the animal welfare corporations, and they provided that information to us. They brought in vets, they helped us with behavioral therapists, food, and other resources in the early days. And they provided early resources to hire animal welfare staff member to integrate with our team. And so that really helped to support staff members to understand that we would have an identified team member to work within the team around animal care and provide that training, as well as look at some of the factors that were in concern to them in terms of being able to mitigate those concerns.
It sounds like it really required a great deal of collaboration in those early stages. And so I'm curious as to if you could expound more specifically on any specific challenges you had when navigating the PALS program as it launched.
Yeah, I think getting buy-in, not just from staff and board, or for the other regulatory entities. Again, dealing with people, they had concerns that there would be increased risk. Yeah. The regulations in New York City, particularly those that govern domestic violence shelters, were pretty silent on the matter. And government initially was a fast no, that, how's this core to the work? And as we started to show the evidence around pets are part of the family and really keeping the family together and the benefits of engaging a sort of trauma, they said, okay, pilot. And with the pilot, we were able to evidence the data. And the data revealed that, the clients reported, the survivors reported how important it was to keep their family together. And also, we also recorded some of the concerns around health concerns and allergies, that they were minimal. We talked about safety precautions. I guess the regulatory bodies thought at the time they would see a bully dog, a pit bull running down the hallway, not muzzled, chasing a 2-year-old and biting that 2-year-old, right? That's worst case scenario. And how did you allow them to do that? So that didn't happen. We really trained up the staff and really understood animals and worked with the whole community, other survivors and staff, to really around some training and rules around having pets in shelter, particularly in the DV shelter. The other thing I would just say, Tony, is that in our environment, like at this time, fast forward to 2023, I think we started with about 19 families. We could 10 and then 19 when we were fully out of pilot. Now we're able to, I think in a year, about 200 to 250 families with a capacity of about 100 families at any given time in one of our shelters. So we've learned a lot in terms of deepening our impact in terms of working with families over the long term. And so that's been really beneficial in being able to have that safe space. We're also working with other providers to understand the importance of pets and people, particularly those impacted by violence and hopefully homelessness, why it's so important to create even more capacity.
That's wonderful. It sounds like you're paying it forward in a sense of expanding that knowledge and capacity for others. And it kind of leads into my next question is, I'm curious as to how, for URI as an organization, how has serving people and animals together impacted the organization? And particularly, how has it impacted you as a leader of that organization?
Now, my team always challenges me because I'm not a pet owner, right? And so they say, how do you sort of get this issue? You don't have a pet. And my children worked on me for some time. More seriously, it's so interesting that so many people want to join our team because they talk about, I've been part of a human services organization, and it's so interesting and amazing that you work with people with pets. So many people have pets, they're connected to it. And it's helped attract employees to the organization, the importance of the work and the innovation and their own experience in terms of having pets themselves. So it's been tremendous from that perspective in terms of incorporating pets into the work at URI. It's allowed us to learn more too about ways to work with survivors and reduce barriers. And we are adding to the field by producing literature. Back in 2021, we partnered with the National Domestic Violence Hotline, as well as PetSmart, to release a report. And it was informing because we wanted to understand more about connection to pets and people, services. And I think Junior said this and others, still over 72% of survivors did not know that there were services available for victims of domestic violence and their pets. So we're learning and contributing to the sector to say, if that's true, what do we do about it as a community? So, we want to advance the sector, the field, to be able to understand the risk factors and be able to do things about it. So even today, working in this conference, what you're doing, what the conference members are doing about increasing awareness about this issue, so very important. I think there was a part of your question I didn't get to, though. Can you restate the second part?
Well, it was about you as a leader. How has it impacted you as a leader of this organization to really bring this to where it is now, where the level of it that it is right now?
Yeah. I mean, listen, not only this, I love what we are able to do here at URI, really be there for people in their time of need, having knowledgeable, committed staff member. I feel so proud to lead the team and to be helpful, to be able to help people heal and meet their potential. So I feel extremely proud. I really enjoyed the fact that we were innovative and had to push down some barriers to be able to stand up this particular initiative, PALS. And I hope as we continue to engage in conferences like this, that we'll continue to increase awareness of what we do. I'm really proud of all of our staff members, the PAL staff members integrating with our DB staff members. Those worlds often would not have collided, and it's so rich. I must admit, though, the animal welfare community could be extremely engaging in terms of their advocacy. And so that's been really good at bringing that to the organization.
I want to leave some time for a Q&A from the audience, but my last question for you is there any advice that you have to offer other nonprofit leaders in homeless and domestic violence sheltering services who are out in the audience now? We have folks from all sides of the spectrum. Do you have any advice for them, that the folks that are listening to this chat?
Yeah, listen, I have met many providers, advocates, and those with lived experience. I would say those listening that our work is to understand the challenges impacted by survivors, in this case of domestic violence or those experiencing homelessness, and keeping them at the center in terms of their expertise and their goals, finding ways to advance their goals. And so if we're talking about people, animals living safely, I think we're talking about understanding that there's not a one size fit all. URI, we have most of our units are apartment style. And so pets live directly with people, with survivors in their units. There may be many other ways to help survivors increase their safety, have access to their pets, and having the whole family heal, besides having the pets live directly with them. What does that look like? It could be a kennel adjacent to the site. It could be working with animal welfare, with ability to foster, with good communication. I did hear Julian with the ASPCA experience, good experience around fostering, and what does that look like at the end when they're ready to reunite with their pet. So it's not a one size fit all. URI is available for technical assistance. You can go to our website at urinyc.org, look at some of the data I talked about. You can contact us. Our PALS team members will provide some technical support to talk about your particular goal and some of the assessments we would do there, and to be able to work with you around how do you stand up a co-sheltering or safe spaces for people and pets.
That's great. So thank you so much for everything you've shared. I do want to, time is a ticking, so I want to leave some room for questions from those that are listening to this conversation. What I'll do is kind of give folks time to think about it by just providing a question from me. Actually, no, Artisha, because we don't have a lot of time, I want to make sure.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like so interested in this.
No, I love it. Go for it, Artisha.
What resources do you have for me to present to my team in California? Because we service all of California, and this is something I definitely want to take back.
Yep. So I would say I would point you to our website at urinyc.org. We have
Can
a
you
lot
put that in the chat? I'm sorry.
Yep, we're definitely putting it in the chat now.
Thank you.
And you'll see information on our report that's very helpful. It provides a lot of data, particularly working with the state of California, as well as other information on PALS at large.
We also have a question from Kay. I want to say your last name correctly, Wanarek. Are you there, Kay? Did you disappear? Maybe she accidentally put her hand out.
Tony, we have a couple of questions that are coming up in the Whova chat, which I'm not sure
Okay.
if you're able to see, so I'll just read them out here. Um, Mr. Fields, do you partner? I think you've already talked about this a little bit, but if you could expand upon it, do you partner with an animal welfare organization to assist with the pets at the shelters?
So we do have lots of partnerships. Now, we were fortunate with our team to identify animal welfare workers that we integrate with our team. So we have individuals who are trained from the animal welfare community that works in this interdisciplinary way with our team. And we partner with other entities. So I would say one of the other animal welfare entities might be the ASPCA that provided some food, some vet care, some behavioral therapist care for our pets. I would say we partnered with PetSmart, where I know for you folks who like to read their literature, we're in the midst of releasing another report in partnership with PetSmart. We partnered with Banfield. You know, we're in New York City, so we have limited space, and the Banfield Foundation helped us to build pet parks. So individuals can be outside and engage with their pets outside, just to name a few to support our work with people and pets.
Do you have another question in Whova, Christine? Looks like our faces are frozen. I'm not sure if that's for just me or everyone else.
Yes, and this will be the last question. Unfortunately, there were some other ones that we won't have a chance to get to. And again, I think you touched on this a little, but if you could expand upon it, does URI just provide services in New York? Is there a way to expand your PALS program to other states?
Yes, we provide services in New York City and in Westchester County. And we've been doing a lot of work from the research we did with the National Domestic Violence Hotline to increase awareness, to being able to have technical assistance. Our PALS director, Daniel Emery, has done a fabulous job with her team. And her team is with others provide technical support. So go to our website at urinyc.org. And you'll see information around PALS. We're going to put it in the chat, and we inform national work. We also were very much part of the Pets and Women's Safety Act. You know, that was a coalition of providers, animal welfare entities, and we got the Pets and Women's Safety Act passed in a bipartisan way that was very difficult at the time to do. So, and that provided, of course, resources for housing and funding of this initiative from a sort of national perspective.
Okay, well, I think we are at time. I want to honor the fact that there's a lot more amazing stuff to come this afternoon. So I definitely want to thank you, Mr. Fields, for the opportunity to speak and just hear your wisdom and your experience. And I will pass it back to Christine.
All right, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Mr. Fields, for joining us. I appreciate you both for your time and your expertise.
Thank you.